Hey, I think I
Hello.
screwed up the beginning of it, but anyway, that seems to be the going theme. What can I mess up? But like I was saying earlier, when I first got on the call with Becca, this is going to be. I'm starting to sort of stretch out some of the artist talks, just so I don't get completely burnt out. So this is going to be my last one for a while. I'm going to try to do it every month instead of every week. And as y'all can see, I went totally crazy and cut my hair last night too. So there you go. That's everything that's been happening. But let's get to the real reason why we're here, which is Rebecca Flis. And let's see, we first met back in 2016 when I was at Salem Artworks, but you had been hanging up there quite a bit. You went to SUNY Albany, right?
Yeah, for grad school.
Were you out at Alfred before that?
Yeah, so I was at Alfred from 2010 until 2014. And I came to SAW for the first time my junior year when we were doing a foundry class, and I was like, fell in love with it. It was the first time that I had really done too much with iron. I can't actually remember if that was like the first time I poured iron or if it was like at Buffalo for the Nor'easter conference.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of hazy, but right around the same time, October and September. So yeah, crazy times. So young.
Well, it looks like for the first time that the chat bar is actually working. I know you can't see that part, but you have Thomas and Dean saying hey.
Oh,
So it's good to know that the chat bar actually works.
awesome.
Yeah, we do have people tuning in today. And throughout the talk, if y'all have questions or anything, feel free to just put them in there and I'll read them out loud and everything. So how's it been going, Becca? You moved and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I've been living with my dad for a few years since I went to grad school. And then, especially when this whole thing hit, I was like, okay, well, I'm definitely not moving out now when it's crazy. But I converted my dad's basement into sort of a makeshift studio. So I have a space to work, even though I don't have a lot of ideas right now for 3D stuff because it's not a lot open.
Right.
So I've turned actually to making some watercolor paintings and practicing that skill, which is fun because I used to do 2D art in high school, and that's sort of everything that I did. And it was only at Alfred that I really explored 3D, so this has been fun getting back to 2D. It's like, oh, I forgot I like this. Like, this is fun.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when you're put in those situations to like figure out different ways of working or bringing it into the house or something like that. But you've really had a lot of experience with similar things adapting and changing because of your allergies and things like that. So you're like the dung mold queen instead of using that for dipping shells and stuff. You do that. You want to talk about that a little bit more?
About the dung molds.
How you got how you arrived at finding that was going to be your solution.
Yeah, well, my God, at Alfred we use a resin in the sand called Linacure, and it's really good, really hard, great stuff, but I found out I'm severely allergic to it. So any, like, contact I have with it started off as just, like, a light rash, and then my exposure, every time I got exposed to it, it was like, oh my God, this is so itchy for, like, a week, and then I was, like, having itching in my lungs. It was just really bad. And then after that semester ended, Coral was doing a, like, I forget what it's called. It's not like a full class. It's like a class that only like 5 people took.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called Environmental Foundry because there wasn't enough people to run a full class. And I said, okay, well, I really love foundry, really love casting. So I took that, and it was actually great because we used materials that were from the earth, like clay and grog, which is like crushed up old fired clay.
Right.
And in the case of the dung molds, dung. And I found that like with my artwork, I'm really like tactile, and to not be able to be tactile with the sand, with the toxic resin, was really frustrating. I had to get like geared up in like hazmat gear almost.
Right.
So the dung molds is like, okay, I'm shaping, this material around the wax, but I'm not, getting a rash from it, and I can actually touch it and feel it. And a lot of the process is based on feel. Like, okay, do I have enough water? It's based on feel. You can't always tell just by looking. So it was exciting. Plus, like, you're making stuff that people made and used like thousands of years ago. Just to be able to use the same process, it still works today, even though we have all these other processes that maybe work more efficiently. But like, this is sort of sustainable. Like, you can crush the old molds and reuse some of that, so better on the environment. It just, I don't know, it's exciting.
Yeah, that is definitely. I've seen several of your workshops at this point, and it's been interesting. And you helped me try it out at Salem Art Works too, and that whole process, it makes complete sense. And I know that was like the ancient way that they did it. But have you done much research into like the history behind it and some of the other processes that they used?
I haven't done a lot of research. I know that Wayne did a lot of research, and he taught Coral, who then taught me, and he probably did way more research than I have. But it's interesting because I think a few, like must have been 5 years ago at SAW, I met someone who was an intern or something, and he was like, oh, my family does this process like back in Africa, and that was really crazy to meet him and have someone who had like first-hand experience of a process that has been passed down generation to generation. And also when we were I was a workshop assistant for Coral when we went to the Miami conference, the sculpture conference, International Sculpture Conference. She did a cast iron workshop, and there was this guy named OK from Nigeria who was taking a workshop, and I got to talking to him about the dung molds, and he was saying how he uses a similar process at his sculpture workshop in Nigeria, and they would do molds where like it was 3 feet thick because the pieces were just so big, and that blew my mind because I was only doing things about the size of a football, and that was a lot for me, just grinding up the materials. So it's definitely something that you can use in a school that doesn't have, the facilities to do something as expensive or complex as shell, which you need a lot of specific equipment for that. And with dung molds, like, I did in Latvia. We didn't have a lot there because we were coming over. So, like, it's just great to be able to adjust to, like, the situation that you're in and finding a way to make it work. So,
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting how they would take and sometimes put everything inside of the chambers to where when it got to heat, they just like flipped it over and the wax would go up and the metal or glass would go down and all that. It's a really cool process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just is mind-boggling to me that, like, how did they even figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I wonder if I could just like mix poop in with this thing. I don't know. Like, I want to be there when they finally were like, ooh, aha moment.
Right.
It's amazing. But it's funny because I feel like that process got me more interested in like non-traditional ways of doing things, which then like I explored extensively in my MFA thesis show because I was casting materials where I couldn't cast in metal because I had like mono and everything was going on, and I was like, well, what can I cast in that is not metal and also isn't toxic? I didn't want to use resin. So I did like soap and lard and sugar, salt. So exciting.
Yeah, that sugar, the ones where they like started melting sort of on the pedestal and everything, those are some of my favorites for sure.
They took really great photos. They really look like glass. Unless you're there in person, then obviously it smells like a confectionery. But yeah.
So you went to Latvia, and that was like 2014. Yeah. Have you been to any other of the conferences overseas or residencies?
No, I haven't been. The 2014 international conference was the first one that I went to, and then the second one that happened in 2018 was in Scranton. So I went to that, but that wasn't overseas.
Right. We were roomies that week.
There were a fair amount of people there from overseas, which
Yeah.
was at Welsh Dragon performance. But I've traveled to Poland a few times, and I've met with Michał, who is like a phenomenal artist, and got to see the studios at the Wrocław Academy of Art, and possibly thinking about like doing a PhD there. But it's sort of with this whole thing, like I don't know if it's still happening.
Right. Because you missed this last national conference in Birmingham, Alabama, because of you were in Poland, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of try to do the national one every other year. It's so expensive when you're not getting funding from a school.
Right.
It's just hard because I am not the type of person that can drive for like more than 4 hours at a time. I get kind of nuts, and to fly is pretty expensive. Mm-hmm. So, although it's great, I love it there. It's absolutely amazing being there. Just the site itself, but also like people who are there are just great. Everyone's so happy. Everyone runs on like sloth time. Nothing happens when it's supposed to, but it's like everyone knows that. Don't expect anything.
Yep.
It's great.
Sloth is awesome like that.
And it's actually funny. Sloth, I taught a jungle workshop there, and someone that I had met in Latvia from Wales was at the Sloth conference and took my workshop at the conference, and so that was like a crazy, weird connection. Like, oh my god, I know who you are from overseas, and Latvia was the first time I had gone, across the ocean like that. So that was sort of like oh my god, it's a small world. And then I forget, okay, Iron Casting is a small world.
Oh yeah, it's crazy how small. But y'all did the Coral's big volcano thing and everything during that conference, right?
Yeah, that was an insane night. It was just like, it was pouring rain. It was pouring rain, and she had this idea to set off a firework every time we were going to tap the furnace. We had 3 blocks, and it was so wet, the ground was like mushy, and so when she went to like stake the firework, it fell horizontal and shot into the crowd. Like, what's going on here? Everyone was fine. Everyone backed up, and it was just like, what? I don't know. I feel like the Iron Gods had something to do with that. It was bonkers.
It was May Day, right?
It was summer solstice.
Yeah.
Everyone all night.
So it's bound to be a little bit crazy and hectic.
Yeah, it definitely lived up to that. Definitely. Oh man.
For the foreseeable future, do you have any big things that you're planning on doing or upcoming stuff?
Well, I really need to get back into some sculpture. Like I've been enjoying this 2D making, but I miss working like with my hands. I started a garden, so that's sort of been like my intro back into making sculptural stuff. And then I actually found these. I've also been doing a lot of cooking, and I found that when you peel the garlic, sometimes you get these really cool centerpieces. And so I've been inspired to do something with these because they remind me of like little trees, and they're really like warped. So it's been making going on.
Yeah, I know. I'm always gathering things, and I feel like a hoarder most of the time.
Yeah. I also started a side project called Tiny Big Yellow House, which you can find on Instagram at Tiny Big Yellow House. And I saw all of these like tiny galleries that were like, popping up in response to the coronavirus and people not being able to exhibit in large galleries and being limited by the size of the work that they make. And it's a whole backstory, but basically I had this dollhouse that is a replica of the first house I ever lived in. and it's just sitting in my dad's basement. And when I was converting the basement into my studio, I found this again, which is, it's been sitting there for over 20 years untouched, because my dad, when my parents separated and moved out of the what I call Big Yellow House, which is a big scale version of a tiny Big Yellow House. He just like brought it over here. He didn't want to get rid of it because he designed the house, and I found it, and at first I was like, "Oh, get rid of it. It's just so bulky." Like, oh my god! And then when this whole thing hit, and people were starting to do all of these like tiny galleries, I'm like, "Huh, I can do that." Like, I want to do fun. I'm making a lot of tiny watercolors, and so I started, making materials for it and everything. And I also made these like tiny like cards and envelopes that have little stickers. As like a promotion for that. And would you like to see Tiny Big Yellow House?
Yes, of course.
Really excited about it.
I didn't realize. I think I had seen that you were doing something like that a while back, and just totally forgot about it. But then I saw your post today with your mug. Oh, that's so cute.
So this is Tiny Big Yellow House. It fills this entire room. But it has all of these different spaces that could potentially be really interesting, tiny spaces. Some of these windows come out. I'll give you the grand tour here. You can open the door. Walk right in. Woo. And then on the back, it opens into a more open space. But there are a significant number of spaces.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to do some tests of hanging things on the wall. Not sure what the best thing is to have it not rip the drywall.
Yeah. Maybe the little, you remember the, like, silly putty stuff or whatever that we would take and, like, stick stars?
Yeah. That's a good idea, actually.
Because, I mean, it's only going to be, like, yay big, so...
Yeah, it's not like... No iron nails or anything. So.
Right.
But... Yeah, so that's been a project.
That's going to be awesome.
I'm excited. Just, like, tiny art. Like, you could just, like, a tiny thing and put it in there and be like, oh, look, it's so tiny, but it looks big, because it really does look like a real house in the photographs. Wild.
It does, for sure. Going to tiny, well, not really tiny, but changing materials. We both cast strange things in iron and other things, and you've been doing, baked goods quite a bit, like pierogies and cookies and stuff. I even used your cookie sheet. That's one of my favorites that you did at Meltdown a couple of years ago. What was sort of your inspiration with starting to do the baked goods and everything?
Well, I've always baked to like de-stress. Like, I've always considered myself like a stress baker, which maybe is not so good if you're eating everything yourself. But I found, and I've been baking with my mom since I was 4. We have this gingerbread cookie process, which we do every year. And it's like a 4-day process. It's very involved because of all like frosting making, and we let the dough sit overnight and it needs to ferment, and like it's very complicated process for like a 4-year-old to be a part of. But it was sort of ingrained in me, and I've always had this affinity for baking. And I love like the tactileness of it, especially when you're rolling cookies or you're like doing the like bread shaping. And then later when I was trying to make pierogi in 2017, like again, very tactile process. And I noticed a lot of similarities between like the process of baking and the process of sculpture, especially in foundry where like you need to be very exact in your measurements of certain things. So same thing when you're baking. If your measurements are off, it's not going to work out well. So, if your bed stand isn't made properly, it could explode everywhere, or you'll never get it out. You have to jackhammer it. So, I've seen those types of connections, but then especially with the pierogi, I was making pierogi after coming back from Poland, or maybe I was like before Poland, I think. I knew I was going to go to Poland, but I didn't actually go yet. And I was like, I'm going to try to make pierogi. Yay! And I like did the pinching method, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I did the same pinching method. I'm like, what if I need iron pierogi? Because as an iron caster, you're like, oh, what if it's an iron? That's just like automatic thought.
That's where our brain goes all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Anything you see, you're imagining what it would be an iron and how it would be different. But I saw the pierogi and I was like, okay, I'm going to make some iron pierogi. And I was like, how the heck am I going to, I don't want to make real pierogi because they take so long. I don't want to then put it in a mold and not be able to eat them.
Right.
So I use plasticine, which is a like oil-based clay that doesn't dry out, for those of you who don't know what that is. And the method of me like making the pierogi in the plasticine was identical to the method that I used to make the edible pierogi. And I was like, that's nuts. Like, that usually is not... Like, if I'm going to cast a muffin, I'm not going to, like, go through and, like, mix the wax and then pour the wax and then there's the muffin, like, after baking it in the oven. Like, there's two separate sets of movements that go into making an iron muffin or making, like, an edible muffin. Like, with the iron muffin, like, presumably I'm not going to just, like, take a mold of a regular muffin. I'm going to sculpt it with tools. I'm going to hand shape it. But with the pierogi, like, okay, I pinched it for the edible one. And then with the plasticine one, it was literally an identical motion. It doesn't happen.
Right.
Like, so that was sort of, like, a very pivotal moment. And I started casting some other things to see if it would be, like, the same process. But also, it's funny to have, like, a solid metal edible thing that you can't actually eat.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had so many people that, like, when I had the iron pierogi on the plate, because I bought a traditional Polish plate to, like, display the pierogi on, and people would, like, pick them up like they thought they were real. They're like, wait, I can't eat this.
Oh, yeah. I've had that happen a lot with the fortune cookies that I do.
Oh, my God. And you think it's, like, black. Like, people aren't gonna think that, like, oh, is it, like, a, you know, a dark, like, did they mix charcoal with the dough? Like,
I hadn't even thought about that, because, like, most of mine I take and do, like, the gesso patination with ferric, so it does look very golden, like a... But I can't imagine. It's so crazy.
I also made bronze, like, chocolate chip cookies, and I, like, would patina with, like, liver of sulfur, like, just the chocolate chips. At one time, the chemical I used, I don't think it was the liver of sulfur, but the chemical, like, overnight turned, like, mint green. So they looked like bronze cookies with, like, mint green chips. And that, like, definitely didn't look like a real cookie, but still, when I had them displayed, people would pick them up. They're like, oh, I thought it was real. What? Like, it doesn't look anything like a cookie. It's, like, shiny.
Right.
It's just... People are so funny. I love that interaction bit. It's like, I don't know. How do you harness that in a piece so people know that they can touch it?
Right. Sam and Sharon are saying hello as well.
Oh, my friends, Fox Ross.
So awesome.
So,
I love really good to know that the chat's working.
Great.
Now, with the whole cookie sheet, did you take and add any, like, plasticine to the back of it to bulk it up? Because most cookie sheets are fairly thin.
Yeah, I definitely took, like, I think I rolled out, like, an 1/8 of an inch, or maybe, like, 3/16 of an inch, like, layer on the cookie, like, bottom and, like, the little, like, edges that you... I would pull it out, but it's stuck somewhere being shown that way. I can't get it. But I had to thicken up, like, the lip, like, the little handle to pull it out, and then the bottom. But it was still pretty thin. Like, I think the whole casting is less, like, each part, not where the chocolate chip cookies are on the piece, but the other part's less than 1/4 of an inch, I can imagine. Or, like, 1/4 of an inch or less.
Right.
So it was pretty exciting, like, pulling that mold open. And I'm so glad you got a picture of me, like, doing that. I was so excited.
Opening molds is always like Christmas or something.
Yeah.
Birthdays.
It's just the excitement at seeing the thing, especially with a lot of the work that I've been doing, started off as, like, a mistake. Like, the sugar piece, for example, started off, like, I was expecting the sugar to just stay. And then when it melted, I wasn't disappointed. I was like, wow, this is even more interesting. So.
Yeah, sometimes you can't expect everything, but the unexpected turns out better than you could have hoped for sure.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I actually have another like piece that I want to do that I probably should do now that I'm like home. I cast these like frames in iron, and I want to do a sort of stained glass esque type thing where I cast different colored sugar in each of the different openings, and then hang them. And then as the sugar is melting out, it's sort of like the stained glass like falling and dripping out of these frames.
Mm-hmm.
So I think do that.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Frames are really interesting. I'm going to pull one out now. Frames are really interesting. And they're so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, can you just imagine for a second this with, like, different colors in it. Then it looks like glass before it melts. And then as it's melting, it's just, like, falling out of this frame. I don't know. I think it would be cool.
Mm-hmm. I think it would be, for sure. Jacob says hi, and so is Jenny from Saul.
Oh, all these wonderful people.
Yeah, so awesome. Well, I definitely want to know about your mug collection, because I think you have a more impressive collection than I do.
I have to go upstairs. My mug collection is upstairs. So this is the mug I have right now. This mug actually was a gift from my ceramics TA at Alfred. And he, like, I started using these, like, plaster stamps on my clay pieces. Mm-hmm. And, hold on, cameo from my father.
Hi.
Hello.
But he was inspired by my use of stamps and was like, oh my god, like, here, you can pick from these mugs. And this pale yellow one was just something else. I mean, just like, it just glows.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. But yeah, I have a lot of mugs. I collect a lot of mugs over the summer at Bucks Rock. So some of them I get from Goodwill, like this really great one, Don't Grow Up, It's a Trap. Some of them I made, like this really exciting one.
I like
sort
that
of
one a lot.
I love it. I love hand-built things. And then this one I made, and the purple glaze is really stunning.
It is. Purple is so difficult.
Oh, I know.
Even store-bought glazes is just ridiculous.
Even what?
Store-bought purples can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Definitely. This Batman mug, which you have to drink at the forehead because otherwise you're like weirdly.
I imagine, yeah. I didn't plan that out too well.
So many. So I have all these Poland ones. I have all these in here. And then that's not it. I also have all of these mugs and some bowls. I have some glass ones from Bucks Rock. It was really cool.
I'll have to send you one of my Anagama Kill ones that I
did. And then I have a whole other set of mugs that I found when I, from my mom's house, like all of these mugs. And then I had one that was made for me, which is so cool. Oh my god. Look at this.
Oh, wow.
This is a bird skull opaline goblet
so
made for me by Dolce and Zach Leahy. They're so cool. Oh my god.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, I have a lot of mugs. I collect them. We do like at Bucks Rock, which is the summer job that I go to, or that I work at. I don't go there, I work there. But we do this thing called a cup exchange. So anyone who participates makes 5 cup-related items, and then people like come to the cup exchange, and then we draw numbers, and we do like a mug exchange that way.
Uh-huh.
So I got from that, but also like we do a like counselor sale, and so many cool mugs. Like I want to have a wall with all my mugs. They're just amazing. They're pieces of art that you can drink.
Oh, for sure.
That's really great. Yeah, mug. How many mugs?
Do you have as much tea as I do? Tea and coffee.
I like coffee. Oops. I like coffee, but I also like tea. And I like putting tea different ways. Like the traditional Polish ways with honey and lemon. And the English ways with like cream. But I also like plain herbal tea. I don't know, I like everything. It's great. But I can't drink coffee black. It's just my stomach.
I do that almost every day.
Splash of almond milk or something.
Yeah, sometimes it's good too.
Mm-hmm.
So, watercolors. I've been seeing a lot of those. Has there been any particular subject that I need to get back into it myself. It's been a while since I can't even force myself to do it while I'm traveling and stuff. It's like something I've always loved. But have you had a particular piece that you've enjoyed painting this summer so far?
Well, I really like the wet on wet technique, which like I am new to watercolor. I've done a lot of painting that's not watercolor, but then I was taking a watercolor class before this whole thing started. And when, we got the stay-at-home order, I was like, okay, well, I have all this stuff. I should still continue to do watercolor instead of not doing it. And I have really enjoyed this like wet on wet technique, which means you wet the paper and then start adding the color, and it does this like bleeding effect that's really good for skies. So I've really enjoyed like the landscape-esque ones where you have like the sky in the background and it's all sort of like modeled colors. But I also enjoy like those precise like sections of color. And when you do a wash, but then like blot out the middle, then there's sort of like a dark ring. And I don't know, I really like that effect. And I've mostly been painting like recognizable things. I haven't delved into like the abstract stuff. But I guys, and I really like doing vegetables. And I also like have done a few other like in the motorcycle and stuff. But I don't know, it's just sort of like I like ones that don't take more than like a day.
Right, for sure.
But, I don't know, maybe it's my ADHD, but I can't like fathom it taking longer.
I know, that's one of my hardest things. Watercolor doesn't dry as fast as I need it to sometimes, so I'd use the hairdryer. But oil painting is just nope.
Like painting is cool, and everyone's like, "Oh, oil painting, like you can blend so well." And I was so used to acrylics that I was like, I literally don't know what to do with this. Like it doesn't dry, and I was using the acrylics to blend, where you have to work fast. And I was like, "What is this? It's a week."
I usually overwork it. And it turns out looking muddy or something like that.
Yeah. I have a few of my watercolors here that I've done. Some of them I sold. But I really like doing these sort of like mushroom sky things, little landscapes. The beets. Love beets. They're so good. This is the graveyard I live across from.
Oh, really?
Yep. Never thought it was weird until I was an adult. Like, oh, hi. Little motorcycle.
That was so fun.
So, just like anything that I have like an inkling to paint. Right. But I've done landscapes like with the sky. I have a lot of cool sky pictures that
I'm obsessed with sunsets and everything. Any kind of cloud formation.
And the sky makes a really pretty like pink purple that, I don't know, like mystical.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I totally was unprepared today. I have no questions written up for you. Or nothing.
Or my studio if you want.
Huh?
I said I can do a little tour of my like studio.
Yeah, sure, totally.
So basically, I have my like wax working station is right here. It's a nice like Melodian sort of easy to scrape wax off of surface. I found when I was cleaning some paperwork, I found all these like inspirational things I had written in a frenzy in my grad wall. Things like let it out and let it go. And then like life advice, how to feel alive again. I don't know. Very
I
strange.
need to zoom in on that.
Step one is breathe, apparently.
I need that, like, tattooed on my forehead or something, I swear.
Yeah. Oh, God. And then I have this really great flea market find
Oh, that's awesome.
for inspiration. Some art that other people have given me or I've made. And then we have our grinding station with all the tools. Oh, I love tools. Oh, my gosh. So lots of in-progress work that I need to capitalize on while I'm here. Then we have a lot of, like, God, who knew that being a sculptor would require, like, storing huge things like this?
Right?
Like, come on. I don't have room to keep making large work. It's insane. It's insane. But I have the whole inspiration, like, section, so I find all these, like, weird things, and then I keep them. Like, I want to do something with these little iron runners right here.
Oh, yeah.
That would be really cool.
Keep doing the tour. Somehow or another, my laptop got unplugged, so I've got to figure that out real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Just a lot of strange little things. They're so cute.
Okay, I'm back.
Got the original bottles from my sugar inspiration. It's funny that they look exactly like the sugar, except they're amber.
Oh, yeah.
But I found a new bottle at a flea market, thinking maybe that's the next sugar bottle. Just a growing collection,
Oh,
I
yeah, you
guess.
should, for sure.
Oh my god. They're just, I want to make ones that you can, like, eat. They just smell so enticing. Good. Does anyone else out there like pickles as much as I do to buy this huge thing?
Not really. Not normally. I think some people do, but because my partner and his housemate had a huge, like, one of the big barrels on top of the refrigerator, and I finally decided we'd pour out the juice and become an art jug of some sort, because I've always got concoctions brewing and stuff.
Yeah. Oh. So to be a sculptor, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even like to limit myself to that, but I do primarily sculpt things. So I don't know.
Yeah, but that's a good idea about the surface of the table. That makes a lot of sense, because I've mostly worked on metal, but if you're in a place where you're having to do it at home or something, that I'm in the process of trying to plan out
Yeah.
what on earth I'm going to do now. So luckily, I'll still have some studio spaces that I can work in, but if COVID and lockdown and all that will ease up eventually.
Yeah. I mean, melamine is what we use over the summer, and it works pretty well, but it doesn't do the same thing that the metal does, where it chills really fast. And that's so nice, especially if you're getting that, like, weird skin texture from the wax when you scrape it off.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is wild.
Pretty cheap.
So y'all do some wax casting and stuff at the camp where you work too?
Yeah, we do. The sculpture shop generally does, like, welding. And then we also do a bronze and aluminum pour twice during the summer. We do plaster stuff. Mostly we have, like, a huge scrapyard, and kids, like, teach kids how to weld. But we also do a shop.
Insane. I love it.
I'm so bummed about this summer.
Yeah.
I just like it because I have to wait a whole another year for that. But I can't even imagine how the campers feel.
Right.
So, yeah.
I know that's where I'm at that stage, because Franconia sent out the email about the hot metals, and I'm like, no!
Oh, God. And that's something, too. It's like, what if you can't come back the following summer?
Right.
You know, that's, like, one of those things where, I don't know. It's like, yeah, maybe do it at a later date, but what if you can't?
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
yeah, for sure.
Well, do you have any other suggestions or because you've sort of been in between schools and had different studio situations and stuff. Do you have any for new and emerging artists or even established artists that are in a flux or having to set up new situations? Do you have any suggestions or like things that you've hacks almost, I guess, that you've found in moving places and stuff?
Yeah, honestly, try something new. Like, I really, like, especially with the iron, like, I haven't cast iron in I don't know how long. It feels like over a year, even though I know it's not. I think I poured the last time in November. And, like, I still have ideas for things to do, and it's frustrating that I can't do them. But I have found that making, like, little maquettes out of other materials, like, helps so I don't, like, lose that idea. Especially if you have access to, even, like, if you get, like, beeswax, like, you can even sculpt that with your hand, like, put a chunk of wax like that in hot water, or not hot water, warm water, because that's another technique that we use over the summer to help sculpt a material. Because you can't always have access to microcrystalline wax, which I don't have access to anymore. It's expensive. So sculpt, I do a lot of, like, sculpting things out of, like, Sculpey, which you can buy over the internet. You can make, like, oh my god, words. Oh. You can make a non-rubber rubber mold out of just plain silicone to sculpt around your Sculpey to then, like, cast it in paraffin wax, which is candle wax. So I found a lot of, like, ways to work around that, but also I found that trying something, like, new, like, if, for example, this, like, watercolor situation, like, I never thought about a lot of the, like, color in my sculptures because I've always, besides this new sugar project, I've always just been focused on what the material actually does, but I think this is allowing me to, like, experience color and maybe bring that into my sculpture when I can do it again at the scale that I want. Yeah, I don't know. And another suggestion that I need to take myself is to just do a sketchbook. Even if it's just writing in the sketchbook, like, having all of my ideas in one place instead of just scattered on bits of Post-it note would be really helpful, so I'm not, like, spending an hour looking for the pink Post-it note where I wrote down that idea that I can't find now.
Right.
Oh, it's so frustrating. I frustrate myself.
Yeah, it definitely happens. I have so many notebooks and things, and I'm like, okay, I'm officially not separating my journal writing about art into a different book. Everything's going into one place because, so now my sketchbooks are less art and more just like, oh god, it's crazy. Yeah.
I've always been, like the type of person that gets frustrated with, like, sketching because I think about things in 3D. So for me, it's really making, like, little maquettes of things, and then I store, like, those maquettes in a place. But it's easier for me to, like, sculpt out, like, a little mini version of something because then I can, like, see what it'll look like in the round instead of me trying to, like, draw it. Or I'll do a lot of extensive, like, paragraphs about how I want the piece to feel in the end because that's important to me instead of just what it looks like. I might not know what the heck it looks like, but I know how I want the viewer to feel, like, when they're experiencing the piece. Or, I try.
Right. It's so crazy because there's been a couple of pieces, like, for some reason, I do, like, tons of sketches until I settle on one thing, and then I, like, take all the parts and pieces apart and draw them, and I'm very, like, graphically, or, like, drafting, I guess. I'm more of the mechanical mind on that for some strange reason. It's like, if I do point A to point B on pieces like that, it usually works really well. Mm-hmm. But I do like having the freedom of just, like, jumping into the materials and going with it. It's crazy how they do different ways, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know, I'm in the mindset of I always like learning new things because if I don't learn anything new, like, it's kind of, life is boring. Yeah. So, right now it's watercolor. That's my new thing. Yeah. And I go back and I'll do some iron casting when I can do that again, and it'll be great, and I'm excited for that. And in the meantime, I'm practicing this other thing. It's like a challenge. It's like a puzzle. Like, how can I do this?
Yep. You have to
Oh.
stay curious for sure. And,
Mhm.
like, you've been sending wonderful little packages of stickers and stuff like that. It's so fun.
Stickers and fun.
Yep.
I actually found a huge selection of stickers when I was cleaning and recognized this.
Oh, yeah.
So many iron stickers. I don't know what to do.
I've run out of room on my guitar case and stuff. It's insane. I have too many stickers.
Like, I don't know where to put them. I don't want to put them somewhere where they're going to get lost.
Right.
Or, like, I don't want to put them on my wall because, you know, what happens when I move.
I used to, when I was a kid, I always had, like, Lisa Frank.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they would have, like, little books that you could take and put stickers in. And that I always had, like, I had 5 of those, I guess. And every time I go to the doctor, I get a sticker. And every time, because I'd go weekly to get allergy shots and everything else. So I have a lot of stickers.
Oh, my gosh. I actually just also found my Pokemon card collection, which I never used and inherited from someone else. And it's like, why do I have like 1,000 Pokemon cards? I never use them, but they're like, you know, they're little cute things. I don't like it.
You should sculpt some of the little Pokemon things and cast them in iron.
Yeah. Oh my god. Can you imagine an iron Bellsprout? Literally the cutest thing.
That'd be awesome. I've had the silicone to take and make molds of the D&D dice, or, you know, like the D20s and all of those. I've had that for over a year now. I'm like, this summer, I'm going to make these molds.
Oh my god. I did that once. I plaster, like, molds of, like, parts of the die, and then I used them with clay to make this, like, because we do a Secret Santa at Bucks Rock, and so I made this mug for someone that really, like, ran the Dungeons and Dragons game that I was a part of, and he was like, oh my god, I can't believe this, because I made the mug, like, black, and then I had these protruding, like, dice that I, like, you know, the low fire glaze, and I, like, painted the low fire glaze, like, different colors on each of the die, and it was dice. Which one? Plural. I never know. But yeah,
that is a hard one.
Anything like angular like that, it's a thing that I feel like a lot of sculptors are attracted to.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah.
Have you, when you're doing because I've messed around with stained glass stuff and trying to recreate Gothic archways and stuff like that. Have you had a hard time, like, processing or thinking through certain ways to apply the content to that, or, like, recreate, I guess, or I don't know. I always come to a roadblock when I'm working with Gothic architecture.
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't, with the pieces that I had, the, like, archway pieces, I didn't want to have them be direct replicas of, like, stained glass patterns, because I felt like they were too rigid in a way, and I wanted these to be more organic looking, especially because I forced them to miscast, which is always exciting for me. I know not for other people. But I think there's a really, like, beautiful quality of things that, okay, like, things that are supposed to be symmetrical, but then with the miscast, like, they're not symmetrical, and you can't plan that. Because if you plan asymmetry, 90% of the time it's going to be too regular, because that's just where we always want patterns, like, as humans. But I think it works to my advantage of having something that references this, like, stained glass quality without being, like, a direct copy, because otherwise it's too much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I just looked at, like, iron gates and, like, the way that those, like, raw iron gates were, because I think they're similar in style, but, like, more fluid. But I hear you. I mean, I know a jeweler who does a lot of, like, of that. I don't know what it's called, filigree or like the twisties and everything, all those like crazy like window designs. But it really takes a lot. I don't know how she does it. It takes a lot of like drafting, I guess, where you like have like the circle, and then you divide the circle, and then like on each of those like divisions, like you have them divided again for where the curls go, and I don't know. I admire that.
Yeah,
I can't do
I
that.
think that was my thing, is I work so much more organically, and like I can do stuff that looks like vines easy when I'm doing blacksmithing, but it's like if I'm trying to, everything always looks a little cockeyed or something if I'm trying to do something very symmetrical, and it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess for me, like when I was making the patterns, like I would have a piece of paper, like for the outer pattern at least. My stuff is not symmetrical either, like perfectly, which I'm okay with that because I'm like, whatever, it's not important to me, which maybe is bad. But I would have like the paper, you know, when you like would do the Valentine's hearts and you would like make a heart on half of the paper and then
Yeah,
up in it.
that helps a lot.
Yeah. Which, like, it's funny that I can't do that in drafting. Like, I have to have a physical piece, which, again, sculptor.
I think it's pretty common.
I don't know, I just, like, can't. I don't know. It's just a lot of measuring.
Yeah.
Just a lot of measuring and a lot of, like, not real measuring, like, where you do the, okay, it is this length on either side. Like, not an inch and a quarter, like, it's this length, and I'm going to hold my finger here and move it over here,
Right.
and then that's going to be the same. Very doing.
So crazy. Well, we're down to the last 10-ish minutes of the hour, so if anybody has questions, holler them out if y'all are still out there, and otherwise, we'll just continue chatting a little bit and go from there.
Definitely.
Are you planning to come to Sloss in the spring? If we have it, I guess.
Yeah, I would love to. What is it, the odd year?
Yeah.
I usually go in the odd year, so yes. I'm going to say that's a yes. I would love to get involved with Sloss.
I'm working with the exhibitions committee this time, so we're starting to get geared up. We're having our first official subcommittee meeting at the end of the month, so.
Exciting. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Maybe I'll do that thing again. What? And those proposals open?
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
We should. I'm trying to think, because it's like there's always so much that when we're together we think of that we need to do exchange-wise or whatever, but. If I get the gumption up to do a watercolor, I'll send it to you.
Definitely, I would love that.
Well, I'm going to sign off for the night. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And well, I'll definitely keep you up to date with everything that's going on. And like I said, this is the last one for the month. I'm postponing everybody else, and we're going to jump in with them a little bit later on. But I really appreciate you hanging with me today and going through it. And so it was good catching up with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much.
Yeah, totally.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.